That's what I didn't press. Okay. I think we're live everywhere now. Welcome. We're here on User's Guide to the Soul. We're learning in the Tanya on page 447. And this is chapter 33 in the Tanya, which is a major chapter. Like we said in the past, if you've ever seen these pictures or paintings or art of Hasidim dancing and singing, you know, where do they get this tremendous joy from all the time? Well, that's really a skill, and it's a skill that comes from this chapter, which is part of the written Torah of Hasidus, according to many. And this shows us how to just create extreme joy in any situation, which is obviously a more fun life, but also allows you to be more effective in the world. Because if you ever encountered someone that was just so excited and happy to do something, you just wanted to go along with them, didn't you? And if you've ever been in that state, you find obstacles just melt away easily. You don't have to fight with the world because you're just so excited and happy that, you know, things happen. So that's a skill we're working on. And to catch us up, if you, this is our third class on chapter 33, right? The Alter Rebbe says, I've given you a few meditations already, and please feel free to review our past classes to catch up on those. But this is a meditation to even elevate your joy above what we've had so far. And that is to meditate on God's total unity and infinity such that the whole world doesn't exist. Such that Ein Od Milvado, there's nothing other than God at all. Any place, any time. And the whole world, including you, is nullified in front of that truth, in front of God's reality. And if we really meditate on that and have that be, so to speak, a slide that we insert into our interpretation of the world as it's moving and occurring, now we'll always be close to God. And that feeling of being close to God, if I can insert that into my mind, if I can allow neuroplasticity to let my mind reprogram, retrain my interpretation, that will create intense joy because now I'm close to God all the time, right? I'm close to this infinite light. It's the most beautiful thing. And he brought two analogies on page 444 and 445. He said, if it's hard to picture, imagine one word that you're going to say tomorrow, the way it is hidden in your power of speech, your power of emotion, your power of intellectual apprehension. Does that word really exist? No, it's just you. You could say anything tomorrow. That's the amount of reality, even less, that the world has within the Ein Sof. That the entire world is so hidden and nullified within the Ein Sof as if it were one word that you're going to say tomorrow the way it's hidden in you now. So that I can picture. That's pretty nullified. And he also said, or like a ray of sun before it leaves the body of the sun, the sphere of the sun. So inside the sun, the rays of the sun are much hotter, aren't they? Right? You're right there in the source. But if you're talking about the sun, is there really a ray of sun there? No, it's just sun. It's all part of the sun. So the way a ray of sun would be nullified when it's still inside the ball of the sun, that again, the whole world is nullified to that extent because God's never anywhere else, right? God's never gone from where we are. We're always inside the body of the sun, so to speak. S-U-N. And we do want to spend some time because when we think about this, we generate these intense emotions that we're talking about. We generate this intense joy, but you have to sit and maybe perhaps before you're praying or while you're praying or take some time, sit and focus your mind in a meditative stance as we've learned to really impress this because it takes training, it takes repetition. And then you start to generate new emotions and you have access to this intense joy no matter what your surrounding reality. Right, and then he says, and then he gives us three levels why this should make us happy, right? One, because we're actually close to God. And for all those people, let me let in Paula. For all those people that spend years and years seeking the spiritual enlightenment or seeking even you know, the joy that comes with that, that's just spirituality. That's just closeness to the spiritual realms and higher aspects of myself. Imagine closeness with the essence of God and how much joy that brings. And B, not just that I'm close to God, but that is actually the purpose why the whole world was created. As we said last class, we all have free will and we can live life as if I'm a lump of flesh with no rules and no creator. I have that free will. And yet when I turn, I do the right thing and I recognize God's essence, that I'm close to it, that actually fulfills God's reason for creating the world. Gives God well, that's the third piece. But God created the world so that beings like us who have free will to deny that reality will then get to know it and perceive it and recognize it. Yeah, that's why all the spiritual and the physical worlds were created. So it causes, again, great joy that I'm fulfilling the purpose of the world, right? If this is a movie, I'm right at the climax of the movie and the music is sweeping and the tears are flowing and there's the close-ups happening. This is why the whole world was created. And doesn't that give you joy and energy as well? So one, the joy of being close to God through this meditation. Two, the joy that I'm fulfilling the purpose of creation. And then three, did we get to three? No, three is to come. And three is that it actually gives God pleasure, right? And we'll get to that today. That, okay, there's my pleasure being close to God. There's my pleasure of fulfilling the purpose of creation. But what about God's pleasure? The fact that I, a limited being, a created being, can give an infinite being pleasure, that's amazing. And that should also fill me with joy, as we'll see. So we're going to start, if you're with us, bottom of 447. The text, as I said, is available in a link in what we'll post, and also we can send it to anyone who would like to follow. So starting with Rick, For
this ability to experience and to be absorbed in God's unity, it was instituted by the sages that one should render praise and thanks to God's name each morning, saying.
And so for anyone who is doing a Jewish prayer practice, including, I hope, meditation, as we've been teaching, one of the standard prayers and a theme that's there is praising and thanking God.
Modani.
Modani, we start with that exactly. Here we're going, Ashrenu, Ma Tov Chokenu, V'chulu, Ma Yafa Yerushatenu. Noreen?
How fortunate we are. How good is our portion, how pleasant our lot, and how beautiful our heritage.
Right? How lucky we are. Right? Not just, God, you're great, I want to praise you, but how lucky I am, and how beautiful is not how beautiful is my religion, not how beautiful is this opportunity, this work that we can do, but how beautiful is my inheritance, my heritage. And as the Alter Rebbe says, what's the quality of an inheritance compared to some other thing I might possess or own, right? If I have a house that I paid the mortgage and worked for and or built or redesigned, that's one quality. But if my parents have a house and suddenly they just grant it to me, God willing, at the end of 120 years, right? What's the nature of that house? How much did I have to work for it? Yeah, feel free to answer the question. If your parents leave your house, how much did you have to work for that house? Right, zero. Yeah, or any inheritance you have, it just comes. Even if you don't want it, you have to deal with the legal reality. It's now been given to you, right? You have to kind of deal with it. So whether you want it or not, it arrives. Whether you work for it or not, it arrives. Whether you deserve it or not, it arrives. And that's what we're actually praising God for and saying we're so fortunate that this is not something we have to sit and create or generate or even reach as a reality. It's something we have to recognize that this is already there. It's an inheritance we have, that God is completely united with the world all the time, and then the world is nullified. And I should be happy, just like, wow, I get $100,000. I didn't have to spend any hours slaving over. That's amazing. Look, how great. So yet another sense of joy that we can add to this mix. כלומר, כמו שאדם שש ושמח, פירושה שנפלה לו הון עתק שלא עמל בו. Maxine?
In other words, just as a person rejoices and is glad when an immense fortune falls into his possession by inheritance through no toil of his own.
And here we're saying an immense fortune, just like We're talking about a relationship with an immense, infinite being. Kein v'yoter mikein le'en ketz yesh lanu lismoach al yerushatenu shehin chilunu avotenu.
Similarly, and infinitely more so, ought we to rejoice over the inheritance which our forefathers bequeathed to us.
Right. So when we look at it, you say that blessing every morning, perhaps in prayers or modani. It's easy to go on automatic. This is a beautiful lens to slip in, to change that prayer from perhaps automatic to something that fills my mind and creates intense joy, which, as we said many times, that is the pathway of Jewish meditation, is filling the mind with a concept so nothing else is in the mind, and allowing that to generate divine soul-centered emotions. That's really the pathway we use. It's not necessarily elevating my regular consciousness above into spiritual reality so it stays there. It's fine for us to come back into the physical world. Why? Because of this chapter. Eyes closed, saying the Shema, maybe I can touch some relationship with God. Eyes open, looking at the world, nothing's changed. Ein od milvado, there's nothing else here. And I have the same exact closeness with God when my eyes are open and I'm driving to work or doing whatever, right? That's this chapter. This
inheritance is the true unity of God, that even here below on earth, there is nothing else besides him alone. And this is his abode among the lowly beings of this physical world, when they are pervaded by the awesomeness of God's unity and nullify themselves before it.
Right, so that phrase, Ein od milvado, there's nothing else beside God. There's no secondary realities. That's one of the biggest guiding principles in Kabbalah as expressed by Hasidus, that we want to impress on our minds and use to interpret our life. That no matter what my physical senses are telling me, there's nothing extra. There's no other reality. Oh, thanks, Hannah. Thanks. Hannah liked us, so shout out to Hannah. Good to hear from you. I hope you're enjoying the lesson. And please join us in Zoom if you like in the future. Eno milvado means there's nothing else, there's no additional reality outside of God. And that when we recognize that, and we experience life being nullified before that oneness, that's what it means to create a home for God here. That's when we're fulfilling the purpose of a soul and the purpose of, in fact, all of creation. So I get so like fired up and thrilled when I learn this chapter. I just, it's like each little page kind of gets me more and more excited to go out and say hi to somebody and recognize that we're just nullified before God and the joy that you can share from it. It's a chapter you want to use, if you know what I mean. V'zeu shamru rabbeinu zichronam livracha tayag mitzvot nitnu l'Yisrael b'Chavakuk v'hemidan al achat shenemar v'tzadik b'emunato yichyeh. Go ahead, Eleanor. Yeah, and if you'll unmute yourself. There you go. Yeah, I know we all do it. There you go.
This is the meaning of what our rabbis of blessed memory said. 613 mitzvot were given to Israel, came Habakkuk, and based them on all the single one faith, as it is written. A tzaddik lives by his faith.
Right, so there's a whole series in the Talmud of narrowing down the 630 commandments to, this group and then this smaller group. And finally, Habakkuk came and said, no, just one, right? They're all based on the one, and that's emunah, that's faith, as we were discussing here, right? Faith that there's only God, faith that there's no other reality, faith that God is one. And Habakkuk says, that's all the mitzvahs, that's everything. So this, as we'll see, adds another measure of joy, because when I get this one, when I spend the day and work on and meditate on this unity and it creates this faith and joy, now I'm not just getting the one mitzvah of having faith in God, I'm getting all the mitzvahs. They're all bundled in. So again, this package of joy that we're learning to encounter and to channel is just more and more encompassing. Make sense? Yes, Eleanor.
I know I'm newer here than most people, but every chapter, every other chapter we come across, there's always just one. Like studying Torah was the one, and now we have faith is the one.
Yeah.
Is that happening all the way through?
Yeah, you know, that's the thing about Judaism is we're not so big on logical consistency, right? And that's it's hard for our Western conditioning to kind of get that, because when we think of truth, we think of truth as being something that's logically consistent, right? But truth in Kabbalah is something that applies, you know, you've probably heard the teaching, emet, truth, is an aleph, a mem, and a taf. So aleph being the first letter of the alphabet, mem being the central letter, taf being the last letter. Something that's true needs to apply to everything from the start to the middle to the end, no matter what level, right? So now look at reality. If something is true in reality, if I'm going to say, you know, it's true that Torah study equals everything. Now I'm saying, no, faith equals everything, right? If that's a truth, it has to apply to someone like me, who's a regular Joe, a regular Joseph, right? And to someone like, you know, a tzaddik, who's on, you know, so many levels above me. And what does his reality have to do with my reality? Nothing. Like, how would that truth relate to him and to me? There's no way it looks the same. Like, my truth is probably opposite of his truth or her truth. And yet, we say truth is something that runs through every level and expresses in some way for every possible experience that could ever happen. So in Kabbalah, when you talk about truth, you kind of have to let your rational mind let go of logical consistency, because truth is something that has to apply to such an infinite spectrum of situations and realities that often the same truth will look the opposite on one level and another. That's a complicated answer, but does that speak to what I'm saying? It's the same thing here. When, you know, they have no problem saying, you know, it's all about Torah study. Torah study is everything. It's the only thing that matters. And then the next chapter, it's all about prayer. The next chapter, it's all about faith. And, you know, when we're learning Kabbalah, you have to kind of loosen that logical consistency pattern that we like in the West. So it depends what you're talking about. I know I got hung up on that the first time I was through the Tanya. Like I was like, well, you just said, but that. So it's part of the way they work. Help me. What page am I on here? Yeah. Kilomar ki'ilu eina rak mitzvah achat hi emunah levada. Ki al yedei emunah levada yavo l'kiyum kol hataryag mitzvot. Is it Doreen?
This means it is as if all the mitzvot, consisted of this one mitzvah of faith alone. For through faith alone, one will come to fulfill all the 613 mitzvot.
Right, so there you go. I got the joy that I'm doing all the mitzvahs. And here's just the simplest explanation, that if I have faith that there's no reality outside God, my life is going to be about doing what God wants, right? I mean, as best as I can interpret that as a Reformed Jew, how can I serve God, make the world better, do Jewish things, learn? And that's, of course, I'm going to be driven to do that. And that'll help me fulfill the mitzvah more than if I have a checklist and I'm going down saying, oh, I missed one, right? You want the relationship, you want the joy from that faith, and that's going to lead you to do everything else, right? Everything else is easier that way. Like as we see Ellen bringing furniture into her house to help her mom, that's a big mitzvah, right? And what drives that? We know it's a sense of connection to, you know, chesed and the flow of goodness. And if I know that it's connected to honoring my parents, right? Now I'll do it with even more joy. So we're really in a high functioning state here. Dahinu k'sheyeh libo ses v'sameach be'emunato b'yichud Hashem b'tachlit hasimcha kilu lo hayta alav rak mitzvah zo levada v'hi levada tachlit b'riato uvriat kol ha'olamot. Back to, Paula, did you want to read for us, Paula? I don't have your picture here. Let us know as we go on. If you want to jump in, let us know. Let's go back to Rick at 449.
That is when the heart will rejoice and be glad in his faith in unity, in God's unity, in perfect joy, as though he were obligated by just this one mitzvah and it alone were the purpose for which he and all the worlds were created. Surely, if there were but one mitzvah for him to do, he would fulfill it with utmost joy.
And this is, it reminds me of a story that just occurred to me now. That the Frierdiker Rebbe, who was the Chabad Rebbe, in the early part of the 20th century, in Russia and then in the United States, he was constantly, he got arrested, death sentence from the government, thrown in jail, released from jail. He's always fighting and just never gave an inch in terms of fighting for, my father who was there, getting a Jewish education and make sure that children learned what it meant to be Jewish, like setting up cheder and just things we take for granted here at Temple Israel. He risked his life over and over to do that. So his life, you'd think, would have been full of stress, right? Always dodging the government, always sneaking around, always worried about his Hasidim being killed or being imprisoned. And one time he was going on a train ride to a very stressful situation, some kind of a meeting with an official, or maybe it was a contentious convention where he might be arrested for his stance he was going to take. And the train was leaving shortly. He had about 20 minutes before he had to leave for the train. And his son, who was the next Rebbe, walked into his study and saw him sitting and reading a book with like a glowing smile on his face, just relaxed, like I'd be maybe after a week's vacation, 2 days before I'm coming back to work, I'm sitting on an island in the Bahamas, I'm reading my favorite book, I got a margarita, and just like relaxed, just completely at peace. And his son-in-law said, Shver, how is it that you can be so clearly happy and enjoying and relaxed when you're about to leave on a train to go to this very stressful thing in such danger? And the Frierdiker Rebbe said, that's the secret of making use of time, is only focusing on what you're doing now, only focusing on this mitzvah. As the Alter Rebbe says here, as if that's the only mitzvah you're sent here to do, as if that's the whole purpose of creation. And he got that, of course, from the Alter Rebbe. The Frierdiker Rebbe was the sixth disciple of the Alter Rebbe. And the Alter Rebbe taught, here we are saying, I'm going to generate joy by having faith in the complete unity of God, and that's going to create joy because I'm close to God, is going to create joy because I'm serving my purpose. But now, do that mitzvah of generating, of recognizing the unity of God as if that's the only mitzvah the Jews have, as if there's no distraction. Because I don't know about you, but sometimes, like this morning, I was doing my prayer practice, but I knew I had this class to get to, and so I'm kind of planning as I'm praying, and whole sections of the prayer, I'm basically doing a class outline instead of praying, right? So what a higher functioning state to say, this is the only mitzvah I have right now. There's no other mitzvah to think about. I'm going to do this mitzvah as if God came on to Sinai and said, here's a Torah, there's one mitzvah, have faith in God. And if you get that right, you're done, right? You're a Jew that's close to me. And so while we're doing this meditation, put everything else out of your mind, recognize that everything else is included in this mitzvah, and let that generate even more joy. Is that a stretch for you guys, or does that makes sense, that point? If Rick's not arguing, then I'm in good, yeah? Any thoughts on that? I wonder if there any comments from our Facebook people. Let me check if anyone from Facebook has got any questions here. Normally I have Maya to do that. I'm not seeing anything. So let us know if you have any questions. I'll try and get back to them afterwards. Thus, hare bechoach. Is that where I am? Let him thus rejoice?
Yes.
Yeah. Hare bechoach v'chayot nafsho b'simcha rabba zo tit'ale nafsho l'mala mala al kol ha'monim kium kol ha'taryag mitzvot mibayit u'michutz.
Let him thus rejoice in the mitzvah of faith, and by the power and vitality of his soul, generated from his great joy, his soul will soar far above all obstacles hindering his fulfillment of all the 613 mitzvot, both obstacles from within, from one's animal soul, and from without, arising from one's environment. you want me to go on?
Isn't that beautiful? That not only will I have this joy at my disposal, and who doesn't want to be happy, right? Pursuit of happiness, that's like at the core of America. So here it is. And also, I'm not just going to get through obstacles, I'm going to soar far above them. Far above them. Like, imagine you're down and you're in a desert and there's dunes in front of you and there's pits and there's vipers and scorpions. Okay, maybe you can get through them. Now imagine I'm on a jetliner flying above that desert and I'm looking down, I don't even see them, right? That these obstacles, I'm so far above them that they become irrelevant. That's the way joy breaks down barriers. Not just by managing to get through them with a struggle, but now soaring far above them. And whether you're here in this class or out on Facebook or watching in the future, whatever divine providence has sent in front of you that's blocking you from giving your best contribution to the world, from adding your piece to the world, this is the key that will let you soar completely above that obstacle. And it'll become just irrelevant beneath you. Yeah, because you've done your meditation, you've got this emotional juice, and now you're on a different plane and you're able to just soar above. Yeah?
I sort of understand now, without this faith, you wouldn't want to study Torah. Without this faith, you wouldn't want to do your prayers. So without total faith, nothing else would really matter.
Okay, but that's true. That's true. I prefer to flip it into the positive and say, yeah, without this faith, I probably still, learn and pray, but with this faith, I'm going to learn with intense joy. I'm going to pray with intense joy. Yeah. So my gloss would be to express it in the positive. That okay. I think everyone here, likes learning and would do it anyways. But if we internalize this, now our learning will be infused with this joy that adds depth and momentum and everything.
Okay.
Yeah. וזהו שאמר באמונתו יחיה. יחיה דייקה כי תחיית המתים דרך משל כך תהיה נפשו בשמחה רבה זו. Are we, Maxine, is it your turn?
Okay. Thus the expression will live in the verse, a tzaddik will live by his faith, is meant in the sense of will be revived, as though resurrected from the dead. So will his soul be revived by his great joy.
And that really is the way Kabbalah looks at our connection to our soul. When we're connected to our meaning and our soul, and we're learning and we're contributing, that is our life force. That is truly being alive. And I can still be physically alive and just dedicate my life to the pursuit of self-centered pleasures or money or nihilism or whatever. But for anyone who's lived through different periods of life and different philosophies that they followed, if you look back at those times, it's like there's something missing there. There's not a fullness to those years. Whereas when you're in your purpose, when you're in the flow, when you're really aligned and contributing, now there's a vitality, there's a life. So much so that we call it resurrecting, right? Making something that was dead alive again. Yeah, connecting to this faith. And here we get to the third ingredient in our joy recipe. V'hi simcha chula. ומכופלת כי מלבד שמחת הנפש המשכלת בקרבת השם בדירתו אותו איתו עמו. Dan?
This is a double and redoubled joy. Apart from the soul's joy upon apprehending how near God is to him and how he dwells together with him.
Right. So first it's a double joy that I'm close to God because I'm now it's firm in my mind that the world is nullified. There's nothing else. Doesn't matter if my eyes are open or shut. It doesn't matter if I'm meditating or just in a conversation. I'm always close to God. Plus, I know that my awareness of being close to God is creating a home for God. So now it's a double joy. But now we'll see it's a redoubled joy. Why? עוד זאת ישמח בכפליים בשמחת השם וגודל נחת רוח לפניו יתברך באמונה זו.
He will also rejoice doubly in the joy and pleasure which his faith brings to God.
Yeah, I'll also rejoice in the joy that I'm bringing to God. And, you know, if we're parents, we understand this, right? I think everyone, perhaps everyone in this class, I think as parents or grandparents, and, you know, sometimes you talk to someone that doesn't have kids or hasn't yet had kids, they look at what it takes to raise a child and they think, what a sacrifice. How do parents give up so much? They give up their time and their freedom and their, you know, their workouts and their professional goals, all to raise children. What a sacrifice. And yet when you're a parent, you realize it's just the opposite. Because when you have kids, they're very much an extension of yourself. And when they're happy, you're happy. In fact, that's a higher happiness often than what brought you your own joy. And it's not a sacrifice, right? If I want to go on vacation, I don't think first, what vacation will make me happy? Where do I want to go? You know, what's going to be most satisfying for me? I think first of all, how old are the kids? What are they going to enjoy? You know, what's going to be best? You know, what's going to give my wife Jen a little bit of peace of mind because the kids are happy and doing stuff, and you plan it around that. And then when you go and you see your kids are happy and enjoying, you're in heaven, right? And do you have good food and do you have good activities? Okay, maybe, but that's not what brings you the highest joy. You're happy seeing your kids happy, and it's not a sacrifice. And it's the same thing here. When we establish a relationship with the infinite and that everything is nullified, then being able to give joy to that one infinite being, to bring joy to the essence of the Ein Sof, what could be called a sacrifice? I mean, what wouldn't I do to do that? And the fact that I can do it just by generating faith, that's amazing. I don't have to sacrifice anything. Just sit for 10 or 15 minutes, focus on this meditation, create these emotions, and then recognize I'm creating a home for God, and that makes God so happy. God's like, that's why I created you guys. Now you're doing it. And it makes God happy. And that should bring me, as you said, a doubled and redoubled joy. De itkafia sitrachra mamash vitapech shocha linhora. Yeah, Doreen, for thereby. Doreen, you got the text? We're 450 for thereby, the third chunk.
For thereby, through one's faith in God's unity, the Sitra Hachara is truly subdued and darkness is transformed to light.
So we'll get into a few kabbalistic terms that if you have been with us, we're not going to go too deep into it. You know, this whole idea of a connection with God reminds me of a joke I heard from my father, my teacher, my father. He said, you know, in Israel, in North America, they were digging, and some archaeologists went way down and discovered something amazing. They dug down to what they said was, 20,000 years ago, and they found fiber optic cable. 20,000 years ago, they carbon dated it, and they're like, that's amazing. They had fiber optic technology 20,000 years ago. They sent it all over the world, and an archaeologist in Israel replied, I know, that's wonderful, but here we dug down to 20,000 years and we found absolutely nothing. So you guys had fiber optics, we had wireless. That's our way of connecting with God. There's nothing there, it's just wireless, right? Oh, we got the big thumbs down. My father you're talking about, have some respect. So we're going to get into some kabbalistic terminology here. Klipa, if you haven't been with us, means the shell, the superficial side of the world, and Sitra Achara that we just said means the other side of holiness. So here we're talking about really generating a sense of complete unity with God and nullification, and that's the definition of holiness. It's something that's nullified before God. The opposite of that, the Sitra Achara, the other side, is something that has its own ego existence, or the superficial reality that we are so familiar with in the world. And when we recognize God's oneness, we disperse a lot of that shell, a lot of that ego. We actually, we change it here in the physical world, but as we go up into the spiritual worlds that our soul flows through, there's more and more and more impact. So what might be, a small shift in my psychology here in the physical world, in my physical brain, what could really be a tremendous amount of spiritual klipa being knocked down and deflated up in the spiritual worlds. So we're really causing God a lot of nakas, because God sees, of course, all the effects of everything we're doing unlike us who just see the physical. Ad et kates kmo shekatuv kates sam lachoshech. Back to Rick. Until the end of the day.
You skipped one, so I'll back up. Meaning the darkness of the. I'm sorry.
Yeah, shehu choshech haklipot shebalam hazeh hachumri hamachashichim umechasim al roi parech. Let's go both of those.
Meaning the darkness of the klipa of this corporate world, which obscure and conceal God's light until the end of days, as it is written. He sets an end to darkness.
Yeah, and here he looks at the word Ketz Hayamin, which means end of days in Aramaic, but in Hebrew, Yamin means right. So he's saying, once we all do our work and we all recognize God's unity in our sphere of influence, then the whole world is elevated such that the real chesed flow, the right hand of the Ein Sof, is completely revealed. And now the world becomes a totally spiritual place where we're encountering oneness all the time naturally. We don't have to work at it. Dahinu ketz hayamin sheyavir ruach hatuma min haaretz v'nigla kavod Hashem v'ra'u chol basar yachdav kmo she'itba'er lekaman.
The Bible phrase, the end of days, is written Ketz Hayamin, since Yamin, Aramaic, means days, and Yamin, Hebrew, means right. The phrase thus intimates that in the end of days, God will reveal his right hand, a reference to his attribute of revelation. When he will banish the spirit of impunity from the earth, and God's glory, the godliness within every created being, will be revealed, and all flesh together will behold it. That is to say, not only the mind, but even the very flesh of man will perceive godliness, as will be explained further.
So Kabbalah understands that there's a point where it's not just something where we use the mind's eye to generate this perspective, but eventually we purify and refine the world and our collective consciousness so much that now our physical eyes start to see that. And that the world has a tipping point where now we'll be able to actually see this reality with our physical eyes, and we'll have to focus and strain to see any kind of division or any kind of multiplicity. That we'll only see unity. Einod milvado, there's nothing here besides God and God's essence. There's a little left at the end, and he gets into the diaspora, and he sort of is, he's really revving up the finale here. I want to take a few minutes and talk about a special thing that's happening. So let's finish this next week, and we'll get started on chapter 34. But right now we're in, you may know, the 3 weeks between the fast of the 17th of Av and of Tammuz and Tisha B'Av and the 9th of Av. So it's a 3 weeks where there's different practices. We're in a little bit of a semi-state of mourning. And one practice that's suggested is to increase Torah learning in this time, because that really helps do exactly what we're talking about, knock down klipa and refine the world. So good time to start an extra practice. And it just so happens, there's a text that I learned called Mishneh Torah, which goes through, it's from Rambam, from Maimonides, and goes through the entire oral tradition, beginning to end. So Rambam, Maimonides, one of the greatest sages of all time, wrote this text saying, I know it's super complicated and the oral tradition's crazy and there's all these texts and people in my day now don't speak Aramaic and don't understand, so I'm going to spend a whole bunch of my life writing this complete summary of the oral tradition, completely organized, such that if you learn it, you can learn the Torah and this, and you'll know all the oral tradition, everything. That's a crazy, crazy claim, but Rambam was an amazing intellect, just so far beyond genius, and he did it. And so many people all over the world learn Mishneh Torah in a 3-year cycle, or even a 1-year cycle, which is very intense. I just finished a 3-year cycle. And some people learn it in what's called the Sefer Mitzvot, the Book of Mitzvahs, which is really just a summary of all the mitzvahs, each one with a little, just a little chunk. So that's one mitzvah there, or one mitzvah there. And like a daily portion would be maybe a page and a half. So that's easy enough in about 5 minutes a day to add to your practice. And in 1 year, go through the entire 613 mitzvahs, recognizing what they are. Now, why would I want to do this? Here's my pitch. we're Reformed Jews, and Reformed Judaism is all based on choice, right? We say, halakha, Jewish law, has a voice but not a veto. So halakha is, there for Temple Israel, for every Reformed Jew, for every mitzvah or every question. Halakha should be there at the table having a voice, but not a veto. So if there's something that I say, my morals really have a problem with this, I'm going to not be halakhically bound. I'll maybe do the opposite, but I still know what the halakha is and give it a voice. Now, to make a choice like that as a Reformed Jew, it seems to me the first thing is to know what the options are. To know what the options are. If I don't know the mitzvahs, I can't really say I'm making a choice. That's something else, right? Like if I walked into a restaurant and I said, I'll have a burger. Well, what kind of restaurant is it? What's the menu? What are the specials for today? There's a whole experience where you walk into a restaurant, the waiter says, here's your menu. I'll give you a few minutes. Let me tell you about the specials. Here's what I really like on the menu, et cetera, et cetera. And then when I've read the whole menu, now I can really order. Now I can choose. So I think especially for Reformed Jews, it's so important for us to be able to make choices as Reformed Jews, to know what's on our menu, to know what the 613 commandments are. And so there's an annual cycle that just started. I'm going to post a link in YouTube and on Facebook. That'll be a link to a daily, already prepared for you in English, Sefer Mitzvot. And then if you do that for a year, you'll go through and learn every mitzvah. And then as a Reformed Jew, you'll have the whole menu. And I think our choices will be much better. And to give you a taste of what they're like, the first mitzvah in the book is exactly what we're talking about now. The first mitzvah is to believe in God. So the number one mitzvah of all the 613 that the Rambam starts with is it's a mitzvah to believe in God. Now that's good to know, because I think many Reformed Jews, when you say, do you believe in God? We have the impression that it's kind of up to us, right? It's my opinion, right? Do I watch football? Well, maybe I like football, maybe I don't. Depends on me and how I feel and what I think. And, maybe I do, maybe I don't. It's my choice, right? The question, do you believe in God? For all major streams of Judaism, for Orthodox, Conservative, Reform, has still been kept, right? Reform Judaism believes in God. It's in our platform. And it's not so much, do I think God exists? That's not what it means, do you believe in God? Because how is it relevant what I think? As a limited created being, I can't prove or disprove that God exists. That's pretty clear if you look at it for 10 minutes. So what does my opinion matter? What I happen to think, how I was raised, my conditioning, my intellect, what does it matter whether I am of the opinion that God exists or not? That's not the question. That's almost irrelevant. When Judaism says, do you believe in God? Have you fulfilled this first mitzvah? It's more like saying, do you run or do you swim, right? If someone asks me, oh, do you run? Obviously they're a runner. They want to know if I run. They want to know how fast I do a kilometer and all that, a mile. But they don't mean, do I believe running exists? They mean, do I train, right? Am I conditioned, right? Do I know what it's like to run? Do I spend time each week run? Do I get up and tie my shoes? Do I prepare myself? And do I run? Am I a runner? How well do I run? So that first mitzvah, when someone says, do you believe in God? Judaism is asking, how much have you trained yourself to believe in God? How much have you done this chapter 33, right? How much have I learned about the Jewish ideas that shape my mind to perceive God and to be able to believe in God? And therefore, how much, when I'm in a situation, do I recognize it as divine providence and approach it with joy rather than with, poor me or with anger? It's a skill, it's a practice. So all this stuff we're learning, that's the training to be able to fulfill this first mitzvah, but it's a skill. And it's one which really has many, 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 many levels. And just like running, there's Olympic level athletes who have this faith in God that actually can change the whole world, we're told. And we've seen it historically. Great tzaddikim, their faith was able to change the course of history. And us, we can change our little environments. But like I said, this first mitzvah, it's not about, what's my opinion? It's about, well, have I trained? And by the way, if I don't go out and run, I shouldn't expect to be able to go do a marathon. I'm not gonna make it, right? So same thing with faith. If I haven't sat down and meditated on the subjects in Judaism that generate faith, then when I'm in the world and I need to have faith to get through something, it's going to be harder for me. I shouldn't expect to just, see some proof and therefore now have faith in God. There is no proof, right? Or no proof that rationally holds water, right? It's something else. And another mitzvah, that's a favorite of mine that a lot of people don't know, and this is very interesting to me. I actually went through, 11 years of private Jewish school, then 10 years singing at a conservative synagogue in Montreal, where I was a soloist, and heard every high holiday sermon, every Shabbat sermon. Then 3 years of cantorial training, and a self-study program, and then 10 years at Temple Israel, hearing all our wonderful sermons from all our wonderful rabbis and being involved that way. And despite all that, I didn't know that it was an actual formal mitzvah, not to grow a beard necessarily, but not to shave with a razor. Right? I actually didn't know that that's one of the 630 commandments is if you're a man, if you want to be clean shaven, that's fine. Our halakha allows that, but you got to use, clippers, like scissor action clippers with the foil and everything. If you do that, you're fulfilling you're not breaking the negative mitzvah of do not destroy your beard. But if you use a razor and you just do this, same shave, now you're actually breaking a negative commandment. I'll ask you this. Is there any real, tangible, life-changing problem with using, an electric clipper rather than using a blade razor? Right? I mean, you can say, well, maybe it's slightly closer with the blade. Okay, but you still get a close shave. You look clean shaven. For progressive people like me, you're not throwing away all these razor heads or disposable razors, so it's better for the environment. I can think of it's pretty convenient to just do this rather than, the soap and everything. I can think of no reason why any Reformed Jew would say, no, my morals say I'm going to shave with a razor. I'm not going to follow the mitzvah and shave with a pair of clippers. Like, it's just not. The truth is, if you're like me, that's just not something we focused on. I literally didn't know, because I hadn't gone through like Mishneh Torah or something like that. I didn't know that was on the menu. I didn't know that Reformed Judaism says in the Torah, one of the mitzvot is do not destroy your beard, which means do not shave with a razor. And so then I took the practice of not shaving with a razor. And of course, I'm a tale of caution about what happens when you start filling the mitzvah. Then you might grow a beard, but it's not the worst thing anyone's ever done. But here's one that I put out to Reformed Jews and say, here's a moment in the morning where you're just shaving to be presentable. And you can now take that moment and elevate it so that I'm fulfilling a mitzvah, so that I'm bringing God into that moment, just like we learned in this chapter. I'm saying, here I am. The world thinks I'm just shaving, but I'm expressing my faith. Even here, in my bathroom in the morning, you think it's not a holy moment, but now I've elevated it and I'm serving God. And in the morning, when you've woken up and you're kind of getting ready, would you rather just be doing your shaving and toiletries, or would you rather be serving God? What's a more fulfilling moment in the morning? So it's mitzvahs like these that I think, we know about, we can do, that I'd love for Reformed Jews to know. And so I'll invite anyone watching to start. The cycle started just last week, so you can start today and catch up very quickly. I'll put a link up and just learn a few mitzvahs a day with Rambam. By the end of the year, you'll have the complete menu, and you'll now be making true Reformed choices as a Reformed Jew that's seen the whole menu. Curious your thoughts about that. What do you guys think? See some nods and what? Yeah, Eleanor, you got a.
I did follow the link. It was in, I guess, from the Minyan, Sunday morning Minyan. You had posted the link, and I found the link confusing because there were several links within the link, and I didn't know which one to follow.
Yes, so I've tried to give you the link that's right to Sefer HaMitzvot. So if you look at the Book of Mitzvahs, where it says Mishneh Torah annual cycle or triennial cycle, don't do those because that's like a whole other kettle of fish. That's like a much more detail. But go to
that's what I found.
Yes, Sefer Mitzvot or the Book of Mitzvahs, and then just click on today's date, and you should see something along the lines of, it'll look like kind of a text from here down to here or so, right? And it'll be like mitzvah number 168, a little, the heading, and then a short description, and it's that. Let me double check. I'll click on the link and see if I can find a clearer way to get right to it. Yeah. And, there's other ones that, there's cool ones that we don't even know are mitzvahs. Like I mentioned at the Minyan, when you pay for any education or expenses for any child or grandchild over the age of 13, that is technical tzedakah. That's charity, right? So, I think, okay, I got my tzedakah that I give to this organization and that. I've got an education fund that I have for the kids. I've got, expenses for, saving up for a wedding, God willing. And I think it's all different, but it's all lumped together in halakha. So isn't that nice just to know that when I'm just naturally supporting my kids in their high school education, their college education, they're setting up their home, whatever it might be, that's all tzedakah, and I can do it again with a sense of I'm bringing God into the world. I'm making a home for God here, and lots of things that we even just do in our lives that once we go through something like Sefer Mitzvot, we recognize, oh, that's a mitzvah. I can include that in my sense of Jewish identity. I didn't even know. I just do it because it seemed like the right thing to do. Beautiful. So wonderful learning. That's my spiel. I hope that you will join me. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at msmolash@temple-israel.org. If you're learning Sefer Mitzvot and there's one you didn't understand, or if you have trouble finding the link, happy to help anyone out. We'll now sign off from Facebook and our recording. And if you're in the class, I'll invite you to hang out and we'll just, recap and schmooze a little before we say goodbye. So thanks for joining us. I am pausing on Facebook.